When we start looking at the treatment of tobacco addiction, we know that cold turkey is probably the least effective way of providing treatment for individuals with tobacco addiction. We know that about 3 to 5% of people who receive no treatment for tobacco addiction will be abstinent 6 to 12 months down the line. And offering counseling and medication can increase the odds of success up to 6-fold, which is robust. We generally underdose with regards to nicotine replacement. When we replace with a single step 21 milligram patch, an individual who's accustomed to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, we replace approximately 50% of the nicotine they've been accustomed to. And that is why most people we place on the patch will come back and tell us that this does not satisfy them the way cigarettes do, and it's not meant to. But our paradigm flaw here is that we likely have been underdosing. And to that extent, what has become a universal phenomenon nowadays is to start using combinations of nicotine replacement. For example, a long-acting plus a short-acting, nicotine patch plus gum, patch plus inhaler, patch plus lozenge. That is, previously it was frowned upon. Nowadays we do enjoy registration status with Health Canada to use combination therapy. The guidelines are very clear that we want to offer routinely so a combination of treatment to every individual looking at or being ready to look at quitting smoking. The medication options we have available now, we've started talking about nicotine replacement therapy for detox management. In this case now, we're proceeding with the cessation. That's the quitting smoking part. In Canada, we have 6 medication options available, and those are 4 nicotine replacement options, bupropion and varenicline. So the 4 nicotine replacement options we have are the patch, gum, inhaler, and the lozenge. We can use those in combinations with each other, and we can exceed the initially determined 21 milligram dose that seemed to have constituted the standard in the past. Bupropion itself was originally marketed as an antidepressant, but then became available as a quitting smoking medication. It'll also roughly double success rates in terms of quitting smoking. We have the varenicline available, roughly tripling success rates in terms of quitting smoking. That's the newest option we have available. And it's interesting to note that all these medications work on exactly the same place in the brain, namely the alpha-4 beta-2 nicotinic receptor. Bupropion tends to work through another mechanism as well. It inhibits the reuptake of dopamine and norepinephrine, 2 of the neurotransmitters. The varenicline itself acts like nicotine, but in a somewhat different fashion on exactly the same receptor. It's a partial agonist at that particular receptor, sending about only a 40 to 60% impulse to the reward pathway, and that's the mechanism whereby it works. It blocks the nicotine receptor as well, so nicotine becomes redundant at that particular level, while it simply offers a weak stimulus to the reward pathway. And that's the way it limits withdrawal symptoms and whereby it also curbs cravings to tobacco smoking. Nicotine itself, as said, can be combined with each other, but nicotine can also be combined with bupropion. We generally do not recommend initiation of varenicline plus nicotine replacement for a reason that these 2 may potentially interact early on. What we do know is that most people we place on varenicline for the first week or 2 continue to smoke. But as the level in the bloodstream increases, these individuals tell us that nicotine becomes less reinforcing, and they tell us that the taste of tobacco changes. And that may have to do with the fact that these nicotine receptors are no longer available for nicotine to exert its effect, to the point where once they've reached steady state, these individuals are asked to put in a quit attempt, and it's usually at that point where nicotine no longer has an effect. This is the theory behind it. Obviously, we combine any of the medication use with counseling as well as supportive interventions, and we do so in a longitudinal fashion, meaning like with any other chronic disease, we do not rely on a single visit and expecting people to simply cure themselves. We provide ongoing support, problem solving, as well as whatever modality is needed at that point. if and when an individual is addicted to tobacco, nicotine from tobacco, we need to replace the nicotine when they cannot smoke. For example, when they enter a hospital, instead of forcing people to go through involuntary nicotine abstinence, we should replace it with pharmaceutical grade nicotine in adequate doses as well. And there are guidelines available for the actual dosage determination. One simple calculation could be if an individual smokes more than 10 cigarettes a day, simply provide a 21 milligram patch and top it up with a short-acting medication as is needed. But in this case, it's important to be proactive and not to wait until this individual develops nicotine withdrawal symptoms, because that can be painful in terms of emotional experience. And the symptoms related to nicotine withdrawal can be incredibly troubling, and it can be devastating for some people. It includes things like changes in mood, aggression, irritability, a sense of craving, increased appetite, and many of these symptoms can actually mimic psychiatric symptoms, which then often may get treated with psychotropic drugs by well-intentioned mental health professionals, whereas the actual underlying issue really is not an exacerbation of the mental illness, but rather a nicotine detox phenomenon that needs to be remedied.